This is Woman Being Podcast. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are and what time it is. Today we're going to have a little bit of a discovery sort of conversation.
Ooh.
We're going to see where it takes us. But I'm joined by the ravenously beautiful Emma Williams.
Ravenously.
Wow.
Hello. Happy to be here.
And the unequivocally stunning Kelly Carter.
Oh my God, thank you.
Welcome. Good morning. And we'll be back in just a second after these, intro song plays.
After these important messages.
After a message from our sponsors.
Someone sponsor us.
Just crickets.
Our bank accounts.
Our own damn selves. This is Woman Being,
where we explore thoughts and opinions.
And have the freedom to change our minds.
Without expectation or judgment,
we will hold a safe space and support each other
as we navigate together in the form of feminine.
So before we really dive into what we're actually going to talk about today, I thought we should just have a little icebreaker. Because we don't do that usually, but why not? We can talk about whatever we want. It's our podcast. We can cry if we want to.
Exactly.
Oh, good. It's one of those.
We have.
And we have. But flowers. Miley Cyrus.
Oh.
Amazing.
Thoughts, questions.
Iconic. Love it.
It's in my head right now.
It's in my head constantly for the last 5 days. I have watched the music video no less than 10 times. And I promptly Googled, after watching said music video no less than 10 times, Miley Cyrus workouts, because her workouts look crazy in the music video.
Yeah, her workouts do look a little crazy.
And she is ripped. She looks strong.
Yes.
So.
But I love it. Do you know all the correlations, right?
No, I mean, I listened to the song and I watched the music video and I was like, nice.
May I share?
You can share.
Correlations?
Please, tell us.
So this came out on her ex-husband Liam's 33rd birthday. He dedicated a song from Bruno Mars at one time when they were married to her, When I Was Your Man, and she took the lyrics and flipped them.
Mm. Bruno I did know that. And every time I get Miley Cyrus is stuck in my head, then
switches.
Bruno Mars' song eventually gets stuck in my head. Yeah.
Bruno Mars has credit on the song.
Whoa!
Yep.
And that's good because she did kind of she's appropriating his lyrics. So it's good that she got him involved and avoided any copyright issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
smart. That's smart businesswoman. I like it.
Smart businesswoman.
I like
Fair
that.
She does have a blazer.
She does have a blazer.
Listen to that, certain people. You know who you are.
Yep.
Getting licensing is important.
Very important. And then finally, supposedly, the music video was shot in a house in LA that Liam rented multiple times to cheat on Miley in.
Yikes. Wow.
She did it. Wait, she went there.
Can I ask a really dumb question?
Sure.
Are Miley Cyrus and Liam broken up?
They are divorced. They've been divorced
for super divorced.
a few years now.
Several years divorced.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They were together and then they broke up for a while and then they got back together.
And then they were engaged and then married.
And then engaged and married and now divorced.
Divorced. Yep. Okay, got it.
Yep. Another thing is there's a line in there that talks about we built a house and watched it burn, and they actually literally experienced a house fire when they were married.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, all the lines connecting.
I just loved her. She just went out there. I mean, she's always been very comfortable in her sexuality and in her body, and I think seeing her do that is empowering unto itself.
Yep.
And just seeing her dance in her, I guess, ex-husband's cheating lair.
Yep.
Cheating lair.
Having a good time. I don't know. I thought it was cool.
I know.
I thought it was hot.
It was so hot.
It was super hot.
I'm like, you had to have nipple pasties on.
I wondered that.
I
did she just stand in front of the crew? Whatever.
Yeah,
I genuinely want to go frame by frame because I think there is a point where you could see her nipples, but they blurred it. But it's a far out shot, and so you can't tell as much. She's spinning.
Yeah.
And I thought, but I need to go back and I want to literally
Which I'm here's the thing, Miley. If anyone is going to be the poster child of the free the nipple movement,
Miley.
It should be you.
It should be Miley.
Yeah. And
I
will follow.
I will follow.
I mean, it kind of is. Yeah.
That's true.
She's in there.
Yeah, she is in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I appreciate that. She's whatever, look at my boobs. I don't care. Do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyways. Big fan.
Super
Big fan. All right. So what we're really going to talk about today.
Not Miley Cyrus the whole time.
You're welcome for that amazing segue.
She's a professional, folks.
I podcast on the regular. But I found this TikTok video that actually went viral. I mean, I don't know. It was like 10 million views viral.
I think so.
I mean, okay, because I was going to say, like, it seems like people are getting, like, hundreds of millions of views. Like, is a million views even viral anymore?
I don't know.
I think I think no, but I think 10 million.
It's like 9.5
Although
million.
I think a million can be pretty significant.
No, it's definitely,
on your
that's a lot of people.
Size, yeah.
Anyway, so it went kind of viral, and all these people are, like, commenting, wow, I've never heard of this. And so I wanted to just share with you guys, and we can discuss the topic. I just want to kind of see what you guys think, because it's very new to me as like as like something that's been defined, but I think it's something that as women we often feel very subconsciously or very like just within our day-to-day lives. So here we go.
Nice. Can't wait.
If there is one thing that I learned from my Women and Gender Studies class that is on my mind 24/7, it's kinkeeping. Kinkeeping is the root of stress in most women's lives, and because they don't know the name for it, they are often called irrational. So I'm going to give you a little analogy before I explain what it is. Imagine there's a theater and they want to put on a play. They're going to hire not only actors and actresses, but they're going to hire costume designers, people to move the furniture in between scenes, people to move the curtains, people to sell the tickets, to advertise for the show, to show the lights and do the spotlights correctly, people to have the microphones, ushers to have everyone sit in the right spots. There's a lot of effort and time and energy that goes into a play, but at the end of the day, when the play is done, people are not clapping for everything that they did not see. They're clapping for the actors and actresses that they witnessed. In this analogy, the men are the actors and actresses, and the women are the people who go unseen. During the holidays, there's a lot of cooking and cleaning and planning and organizing and wrapping of paper and remembering of dates, but a lot of it goes unnoticed because the whole role of this job is to be invisible and to perform convenience for everyone, to put on a show. You may notice during the holidays there's a lot of women in your kitchen, bonding, talking, but they're also doing work. And it's not only your mom, it's your aunts, your grandma, it's everyone, and they just subconsciously know that your mom needs help, and they create a bonding experience out of it, and that's fine. But if you look at the men, they're sitting at the table talking and laughing and telling stories, relaxing with their feet up, not knowing what time anything starts. You might notice on a road trip, your mom's wondering, did everything get packed? Where is everybody? Has everyone eaten? What time are we getting there? When are we supposed to get there? What was I supposed to bring? And you might notice your dad saying, calm down, why are you being so irrational? Everything's gonna be fine. Stop worrying so much. And it pains me to see this because this man doesn't see all the work that your mother has done because it doesn't have a name. He doesn't know the name. He doesn't know any of the work she's done. Kinkeeping. It's the unpaid labor that women are assigned to subconsciously as a gender. And not only does this cause a lot of stress in women's lives, but it also breeds a lot of ignorance in men. Did your dad plan that vacation? Did he even get the presents underneath the tree that say "from dad" on them? Does he know when your dentist appointment is? Does he know what size pants you wear? If not, who did that? And who took credit? Let me know if you want a part 2.
Okay, so that's kinkeeping. As defined, it's sort of this subconscious unpaid labor that women take on without really even being asked to do it. It's just sort of like an assumed role that women take on, especially, I would say, more so maybe even in older generations. And like as we continue to progress and, you know, society grows, like maybe we're seeing it even out a little bit more and more, but it's definitely still very unequal. Have you heard of kinkeeping before? Is this new to you? What do you think?
I hadn't heard of kinkeeping until 2 days ago, and we decided to do an episode on it. So no, that's definitely not something that I have ever heard of, but as I'm wrapping my brain around what it is, I'm thinking more and more of all the times that I've seen it in action. And so it's interesting to put words to that thing that I think from my perspective has maybe rubbed me the wrong way at certain times, especially in like familial settings, that you don't really connect why that's rubbing you the wrong way, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been fairly familiar more recently with the concept, but the term kinkeeping is very new to me. And like Emma said, like there's a lot of like memories that are brought up with that term, and like especially as this person was describing it and what it means, I'm like, oh yeah, that's how every family gathering goes. Or you know, the managing like of the household and things like that. It's interesting. It's also interesting to put it in terms of like unpaid labor, because in my mind I'm like, there's a lot of things that are unpaid that just have to happen, but the fact that the majority of that falls on the female participant of the relationship or family unit or whatever is an interesting way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Well, yeah, I mean, let's get into that. Like, what are some examples that came to mind, or like some real life, wow, that is what that is for you?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that, so being a child of divorce, I think it manifests a bit differently for me because I didn't see my parents interact together. But I definitely saw that in like my relatives' relationships at like any family gathering. It is always like my aunts who are, and my like grandma who are taking care of everything that's happening while the men sit around and like drink and have fun, you know?
And bullshit.
Yeah. And like, it's definitely like put onto their shoulders. Like there's not even in my brain the expectation to like ask my uncle what's going on with something like that.
Right.
Specifically on one side of my family, that happens way more than the other. And even I think about my brother, like I think that he falls into this as well because he's used to having while like we both grew up without really having like a father always around, he has a mother who is willing to like fill in all those gaps for him. And so my brother winds up not taking on as many responsibilities. And my brother winds up sort of expecting things to just work out or to just sort of be taken care of. And it's like churning in my head right now that like I've always been pretty critical towards my mother about that because I'm like, oh, you're babying him, you know, like you are being soft on him. He needs to learn how to be responsible and all these things. But then when you think about it from this lens of kinkeeping, like this is the way that she knows how to care for the family, you know, like this is sort of the messaging that she's received is this is how to properly care for the family. And I can't like put that pressure onto him as a man within the family. And so that's just like fascinating to think over. And it's not to say that like he shouldn't, like that means like he should never have to learn how to do things for himself. And he has learned more as he's gotten older, but it's definitely like churning that up in my brain of how it has been like a constant trend throughout my family, especially on my mother's side. It's like those women are always the ones who are taking care of things, which is just, and like that always was frustrating. Like I always like, oh, my uncles aren't doing anything. Like they're just like sitting around. But I didn't think about it in the terms of this is what's happening. It was more like, I don't know why this bothers me, but it does.
Yeah, that's interesting because I grew up with only sisters, but in my family, my mom was a stay-at-home mom. So like, and my dad at some times worked 2-3 jobs at a time. And so growing up, it was just kind of understood like dad's working all the time and mom is taking care of us. And that's the exchange that's happening. But like, I would never think to go to my dad to ask for details of anything. Like it's like, oh, mom has the information. And I would say that would be the same with my extended family. You know, the example of all of the women are the ones making sure everyone's gathered, making sure all the family's invited to the event, making sure everyone knows what to bring and where the address is. Like, it's almost like the women are the producers of any gathering that is happening. And while we have very wonderful, like, feminist men in our family, it is also like, yeah, they'd sit around and just bullshit, or they would be given a task that they were expected to do. And it's like, go smoke the meat. They'd all go smoke the meat together or whatever. And so it's kind of interesting to put it in those terms. But I'm even thinking, you know, extending to my homeschool community that I grew up with, or my church community I grew up with. The women were the ones in charge and not given the credit or the authority, which is interesting. Or like, I think of like...
Sounds like a church.
Sounds like a church. Or I think of like my dad growing up, or maybe when we were older and he didn't have as many, like he had one job. He used to he had a honey-do list.
Yep.
Which is these are the bare minimum things I should be doing to keep the peace in the household.
Oh, that's an interesting way to phrase it. Like, the things I need to do to keep the peace.
Yeah.
Not like to participate in home caring. But
no, it's like,
to appease the
woman who feels taken advantage of and tired.
Yeah,
and it's
like,
why? And that was kind of the way it was like talked about. It was like, oh, your mom gave me a honey-do list. I got to make sure I do it so she doesn't freak out on me. And it's like,
interesting.
That's an interesting thing to think about now from this perspective.
No, as you guys are talking like 100 million examples, like you're reminding me of like, I'm like, oh, and this and oh. And so I don't think I'm going to be able to even like verbalize all of those in response to that. But the one main example that comes to mind is that on my mother's side of the family, there is what the uncles, my dad and the men in my family refer to as the sorority. Which is, by their definition, my mom and my two aunts being the planners and the people in charge of everything as it pertains to family events. My aunts are very powerful women, right? Like, you know, I don't think that I grew up under women who were passive, I guess. They're very strong. They have opinions. They're very intelligent. They're very educated. However, there is this kind of, I don't know, disparity in my family of like, they are the ones who manage holidays. They're the ones who plan get-togethers. And the men are consistently, like, by their definition, left out of like any authority to make any decisions or be a part of that like responsibility. Interesting. They're like, oh, well, you'll have to ask the sorority, or the sorority will have to convene before we can. I think it's kind of interesting because it's like almost a reverent term. Like they are like a monarchy, except it's three sisters, sorority. Yeah, it's seen as almost reverent, but then it's also seen as like, oh, this dictatorship that we all must like I'm the victim succumb to. Yes, like
but also they don't want to do the work. So are you a victim of it? You're just benefiting from it.
That's how the narrative is that we are, you know, victims of the sorority, when in actuality, like there's oftentimes like my dad will be like, Beth, what are we doing for dinner? Or like, what time are we supposed to get together? Or like the men in my family are asking my mom and my aunts, like, what's going on? Yeah. Have you planned this yet? And my mom and my aunts, I think, from my perspective, are so damn tired of, like, planning all the time that they're like, I don't know. And so then they just, like, get together and support each other in this labor that they've been assigned. Yep. And don't always have, like, plans that are ready set. And so the men in my family feel like, oh, well, we just never know when we're going to eat. And the women in my family are like, why is it always our job to decide this? But it's sort of like this weird, like, push and pull. Because again, the men in my family make it seem like the women are in charge, when the men in my family are actually the ones that demand that the women, like, plan, execute, cook, clean, organize, etc. Yep. Yeah. And so yeah, it's a really weird dynamic. And I had a really interesting conversation with my husband around the holidays this year about it. because he was asking, like, we're trying to go to Chicago to visit my family. And he's asking, like, well, what about this and that? And, like, why is it so unorganized? And I was like, because the men in my family just expect the women to, like, plan things and figure things out, but they're tired and they work full-time jobs and they're exhausted and they don't have the time. And so things are unorganized because the women in my family just, like, got tired of trying to, like, stay ahead of everything.
Yeah.
Yep.
And yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting, like, thing.
Yeah.
But I, like, when I was probably, like, more steeped in, like, religious culture, would have thought, like, I have a very woman positive family. But looking at it now from the outside, it's like, it is woman positive, but it's also still, like, confining women to these roles.
There's still the expectation.
Yes.
And the interesting thing, too, is, like, if the women didn't step up and do it, nothing would happen.
It wouldn't happen.
Right?
It's like, because that's the thing. It's like, it's not a matter of, like, oh, or, you know, they're the ones who are in charge. It's a matter of, like, hey, I have an idea for something we should do. I'm going to plan it.
Yeah.
At this time. Or, like, you guys sit down. Me and the uncles are going to make dinner tonight.
Yeah.
You know, that never happens.
Yeah.
And so if that happened occasionally, it would be a different story. But it does not ever happen.
Yeah. It's so interesting. I'm even thinking of, like, all the other events that I've attended in my life that are all planned by women. And if women did not initiate or plan or get all the things together, they wouldn't have happened within church, within the homeschooling community, because for the most part, women are the ones teaching their children and getting them through their education. Like, the dance classes I attended, the events, like, I'm like, yeah, that was all women. Or if, you know, if the women in my family didn't plan Thanksgiving, our family would not get together for Thanksgiving.
Absolutely.
You know, like, it's really interesting.
Yeah, and my mom is, like, she's not an administrative person. And I think, like, my whole, like, if I could observe my parents' relationship, it's like a whole history of my mom being like, I don't really care for this labor, but I guess it's what I'm doing. She doesn't complain about it, but she's like, eh. Yeah. And my dad being like, when is all this stuff going to happen? I'm type A and I want it to happen.
It's like, well,
if you're so concerned, then you make it happen.
Yeah, but, like, it easily could be so solved if my dad felt empowered to just do any of those things. And my mom would, like, do other things instead.
Yeah.
Well, and I think the excuse that I often hear from men that I've known or know is that, oh, well, I just don't know how to do it. Yeah. Or, oh, I'm just going to do it wrong. Or she's just going to, like, me. Yeah. And the thing is when it comes to, you know, organizing, cooking, cleaning, scheduling an event, maintaining a household, nobody knows how to do that until you get older and you learn how to do it.
Yeah.
So
it's not like something you just wake up and you're like, I know
women
how to
are
organize.
just, like, inherently, like, just knowing out of the womb how to do these things. No. And so, sure, like, I've heard this excuse. It's like, oh, I just, like, don't really know how to, like, clean things or, like, where to put things. And so I just don't. And it's like, actually, you could take the initiative to learn. And I know that you can, because I think on the flip side, single men that I've known, and even, like, my father, who has been single, like, my entire life, do know how to do these things. And, like, actually do know how to, like, organize an event or how to maintain a household, because they've had to learn, because they haven't had a woman to rely on to do it for them. So it's not that men are incapable inherently of this. I think that it's this weird, like, weird permission that people feel within a typical marriage structure to become complacent and to become, like, lazy.
Yeah, that is called weaponized incompetence.
Yep.
Oh,
yes.
Tell us more about this.
I should have downloaded more TikTok videos.
She's learned everything.
Anyone just go to TikTok. There's this thing called weaponized incompetence, and it's essentially like, oh, I can't do this right, therefore I won't.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot, very commonly men are talking about this in their marriages. And I will say, like, for the most part, what I've heard this about is from men who are like, this is how I try to avoid weaponizing incompetence in my marriage or in my relationships or whatever. But it's basically this idea that, like, oh, I feel inferior about a certain thing. Therefore, I'm just going to back away and not do it and punish the person who actually needs the help.
Yeah.
Rather than getting over myself and,
It's so interesting.
Like being okay with
taking
like
initiative.
being an amateur, like being okay with learning,
right,
and maybe doing it wrong, but like the hope is that you can then learn how to do these things, and then be more of a help in the future.
But like, I struggle with this because I'm like, you have Google at your fingertips. Everyone has a phone, a computer, something. Or if you don't, you can go to a library, get a free library card, all the things. You can learn if you want to put forth the effort. Also, though, if you do not know how, that shows just how checked out you are.
Yeah.
Like, women, for the most part, learn from watching their mothers, learn from watching their aunts. Like, you learn as you go as well. Like, we don't like inherently know how to do these things, but we're taught how to do them and observe through our upbringing, right? If you're not watching what the women in your life do, you're not paying attention to all that they do, which I guess is the problem, right? But I'm like, you should maybe just like take a step back if you're like, I don't know how to do laundry. I'm like, wow, you've never watched your wife or spouse or girlfriend do laundry? You've never watched your mom, your sister, your aunt do laundry? That's problematic, good sir.
Yeah. And I will say, just, because men always need like a scapegoat for this kind of thing, women can weaponize incompetence as well.
Oh, totally.
By being like, I can't change my tire, or I don't know how to change my wiper blades, or I need help with blah, blah, blah. So there are ways that can be, a two-way street.
Yeah.
However, as far as studies show, the amount of time that is spent on the type of labor that women take on in the household is drastically more than the amount of time it takes to like mow the lawn once a week, or, fix the car or take out the trash.
Yep. Which I will call myself out. Like, I have done
I
those
have
things with car things.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'm like, ugh, my freaking visor keeps falling down and it's so annoying. James, I need you to fix that. And he's like, you're smart and capable. You can fix it. And I'm like, you're right, but I don't want to. Yeah. So I won't like say I'm innocent and perfect in this. I'm definitely not. Yeah. But on the other hand, I'm like, I know how to mow the lawn. I know how to change my tire. Like, I know how to do things. It's just like, I think I'm probably so damn tired.
And I think being honest about what you want, what you don't is fine too. Like, I think like Ross prefers to vacuum and I prefer not to. And so he often takes on vacuuming jobs or whatever.
Good for him.
Yeah. And I vacuum sometimes too. But like, it's like nobody wants to do any of the chores. I think we can all agree to that. And so
I'd much rather sit on my butt.
Sometimes I have to change my own wiper blades. And sometimes I gripe about it. But like, I think it's a matter of like getting over myself and realizing that like I am capable on my own to do these things. And doing them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
although, if you go to an auto parts shop, they'll do your wiper blades for free.
Will they?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, that's the thing.
I'm going to keep that in my back pocket.
There are places you can do things like this. You don't have to do it yourself either.
Oh my gosh. Or like changing your oil. I'm convinced no one should ever have to change their own oil. Like,
really?
It's like $40. Go get it done.
It's not $40.
It's like $60. Go get it done.
But yeah, it's really interesting. Actually, one other thing came up to me in memory about the sororarchy that I want to bring up. And then I want to shift into like workplace kinkeeping.
Oh.
Because I think that's a thing. There's actually so many places we could take this. But anyways, my brother is actually the one who like initiated a get together with the family this year.
Oh.
And like he was the one that actually led the charge.
Nice.
But as I'm talking to him on the phone, I'm like trying to encourage him because he's like, well, I'm trying to get a hold of my aunt and blah, blah. I'm like, you know what, Rob? We're adults now.
Yeah.
We can get together whenever we want.
Yeah.
And like if our aunts and uncles and our moms and dads aren't available, that's fine. Like, as long as like us and the cousins, like we can just do that. And he's like, yeah, the sororarchy be damned. And that really bothered me because it's like, again, it's an example of this idea that he's a victim of the matriarchs of the house, like preventing him from being able to do his own thing. And it's like, they were never preventing you from that. They were just expected to like manage it.
Yeah.
And so because you're frustrated that they're not managing something that you want, you're taking charge now.
Yeah.
So this is not an issue of the sororarchy. This is just an issue of you not taking responsibility until now.
Yeah. I mean, to me, really, the proper reaction to that situation is for him to say, wow, thank God for the sororarchy because they did so much work and this is so hard. Like, I'm so glad they did this for us for so many years.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing firsthand how hard it is to coordinate with all these different relatives, how hard it is to figure out everybody's plans and what works best for everyone. Like, that's the reaction. Call them up and say, thank you, Mom, that you did this for me for all this time. Thank you, Aunt, whatever. Like, you did this.
Yeah.
And now I'm finally realizing it. And my head's been in my ass all this time, and now I know that you did a lot of hard work for us.
Yes, exactly.
Yep. I do think, though, and I've seen this in myself recently, so I guess this is more calling myself out, but like the shift of realizing you have the freedom to take responsibility, that is like an inner shift that I think happens slowly kind of as an adult. And so like, I think being powerful in a lot of these situations looks like realizing, oh, I can take authority, I can take responsibility and like create what I want to see, basically. Yeah. But for a lot, that can be hard. And like, oh my gosh, like I didn't even realize until I was 28 that I could XYZ or whatever. But it is kind of like, meh. You're a grown-ass person. Figure it out.
You don't have to damn any sororarchies to like take responsibility for your own life. That's all I'm saying. You
it's
know
like
what I mean?
all that stuff is still really valuable.
And I think we see that in church culture a lot, is this idea of like, this idea of, oh, like the women run things, or like, oh, like pastors like standing up on stage and being like, I'll have to check with my boss.
My wife.
As if the wife is in charge. But like, again, it's like the invisible, uncredited.
You're saying my assistant is what you're saying. The person that arranges everything for you. Otherwise, you'd be a hot mess and that'd be embarrassing.
And you're using like flowery language to make it seem like you're complimenting them. But when actually you're the one who receives all the glory and authority.
Like, if they're your boss, put them on the church payroll.
Yeah.
You know, like, if
they should be
they're really doing so much work, then reward them for it. Genuinely.
Or they should be up there more than you if they're your boss.
Yeah. It's just, exactly. It's like a cop-out to like seem like you're giving them credit.
Yeah, it's like it's supposed to be empowering, but it's really... It's like a very fake...
It's really keeping kind them in their place.
Yes.
It's really like, just remember, like, you're here. And it's in front of everyone.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, oh yeah, I'm remembering pastor's wife here. And it's like,
she's the boss. Wink, wink.
Yeah.
It's like a joke.
It's a joke.
And everyone laughs.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, so funny. We know he calls the shots. And you're like, oh, gross.
Yeah.
And I've noticed the church and the way that it runs could often be paralleled with what we see in the workplace sometimes, or what we've experienced in the workplace. And I'm just curious for you two as young professionals in the workplace, how have you seen kinkeeping manifest in not a familial way in a workplace setting?
For me, the first thing that springs to mind is that I've worked in like advertising and marketing for the last, ever since I graduated college. And I have worked with really great producers, and they are pretty much always women. And that is the role within advertising and marketing. That is the one who is making sure everything happens. Like, I've talked about producing as essentially like, it's like babysitting and event planning put together. Like, you are just ensuring things go smoothly. And then I see the majority of people who are in like director roles are male. And that's the person who gets the credit for the ad that gets made, is the director. And I think that women have been expected to sort of fall into that producer role within my industry, because that's what people inherently think are their talents.
Yeah.
Even me being a video editor, I have often felt out of place or felt like I'm just more surrounded by men. At every place I've worked at, most of the editors have been male. And so it's like, well, I'm seeing this trend of the people who are like the creatives or the people who are just like not on the side of logistics and planning are the ones who are male. And it's interesting to see that dichotomy and to see that that trend. I think that when you get into higher up things, it's all men because patriarchy. But when I'm looking at it on the lower level, like advertising spectrum, that's what I see. Like the women that I worked for right after college, it was a whole team of producers that were these like powerful women, and there was like one or two men, but it was men who were doing all the editing and men who were doing the creative directing and like all of that type of stuff. And so I've definitely seen that trend just in a workplace role standpoint.
Yeah. I instantly had a flashback to some days where I worked at a place that shall remain nameless. And I was the youngest manager on a team of mostly females, but there was one male manager, and he was supposed to be the operations side. And he was not very good at it, not very organized, not very on time. And I found myself like almost feeling bad that he wasn't better at his job.
Yes.
And wanting to, like, I was taking the extra steps to try and cover his ass because his success actually would reflect on my success. And I'm like, well, if this doesn't happen, my shift could go to shit. And then it's like, well, why were your sales numbers so bad? Right? So it was just like I found myself stepping up and trying to help fill in the gap when really it's like, you should have been showing up and doing your own job. And again, this was the only male on an all-female team for the most part. And again, I was the youngest manager.
Yeah.
And so it was a really strange dynamic, and he didn't last, and that's fine. And honestly, when it was back to all women, everything ran really smoothly again.
Dang.
And so I think that's really strange. And then also, I currently work in supply chain. And there was a time that it was just me. I was the only female on the team. And I want to be super clear. I adore the men I work with. They're fantastic people. But I noticed little things like, oh, if we talked about scheduling a meeting, if I didn't schedule the meeting probably didn't get scheduled.
That's annoying.
And so things like
That's
that
really
were
annoying.
like, oh, like this agenda needs to get made. And then it's like 2 hours before the meeting. It's like, oh, that agenda didn't get made. Like, I need to get, like, and so I will.
And you feel the pressure.
I do feel the
it.
pressure.
Right.
And so, and again, like, not on them. And I did kind of step up and assume a leadership role because we were without a manager. And so there was a need for some of that gap. But it is kind of like, you know, things that you think about.
Maybe you could have shared the load a little
Maybe
more.
I could have shared the load. And again, like, within the topic of kinkeeping, asking for help and assigning tasks and being okay not taking it all on. But also I realized this probably last year is people act like, oh, you're just so administrative and organized and you're just such a detail person, like it's a compliment. And I'm like, actually, I'm a really creative person. And I have become an organized, forward-thinking, strategic, logistical person out of necessity. I'm not naturally that way. I would rather dream and be strategic, like creative all day than someone who is more logistical and whatever. It's really interesting when people don't recognize, like, actually, you're really creative. It's like, no, you're so organized and you're so good at scheduling meetings and sending emails. And you're just like, I am, but I'm not, like, that's something I forced myself into.
Right.
It's not something that's like, wow, you're a 1, so you just poop out organized emails. It's like, no, I've become that way. And so I think that's really interesting. Like, I think a lot of creatives have needed to survive, therefore become acquired the skill sets in order to survive, which a lot of the times looks administrative or whatever. And it's easy to lose sight or for people to not see. Actually, you have other skills outside of administration.
Yeah.
I'm feeling just my blood boil just even having this conversation. Because it's like reminding me more and more.
Fired up.
Well, it's reminding me more and more of all of the things and all the expectations that I will carry in the workplace and not receive credit for, but like be expected to do. And not credit, like in terms of being appreciated. I'm very appreciated, right? Like in every job that I've worked, I've always been appreciated for my contribution.
I feel like appreciated is becoming a trigger word.
Yes. And
Kelly, we so appreciate you.
Exactly. Like, wow. Like, what would we do without you? And I am so tired of being appreciated and not being like for that appreciation turning into reward or for payoff, right? Like if I'm convinced, I'm convinced of this. I don't know if it's true, but I'm convinced that if I was a man, I would be 2 levels higher in my career right now because I would be organized, I would be logistical, I would be strategic, I would have great ideas, I would implement things without being asked, I would I would take the initiative. Like I do all the things you're supposed to do in a job.
Yep.
But like I think because I'm a woman, it's just sort of like assumed that I would be that way.
No, that's meeting job expectations.
And then when I make suggestions, it's not taken as seriously or like I don't know, given as much credit or as much like I don't know what the word is, but it doesn't have as much gravity under it because it's just like, oh, yes, she's yet again, the nagging woman is requesting that we organize ourselves, so I guess we must. And, instead of like, wow, that was an amazing idea for you just being a decent human.
Yeah. I feel like for women, exceeding expectations is meeting expectations.
Yes.
And for men, meeting expectations is exceeding expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very like, I think we've talked about this on here, but like the men are automatically qualified. And women have to prove that they're qualified.
Absolutely.
And so those are some of the weird ways we see this manifest in that way too.
Yeah. I mean, I see this even outside of the workplace in like the dating world. There's this idea that if a man does the bare minimum, he's a keeper.
Wow.
He is going above and beyond.
So
exactly.
good.
But like, I remember I saw this post a long time ago that was a TikTok where a lesbian was talking about how great it is dating girls who used to date guys because she does little things for her, like just brings her a blanket because she seemed a little cold. And the girl's like, oh my gosh, you brought me a blanket? You thought I was chilly? And she's like, yeah. Or like, she like makes her a lunch to like take to work that day. And it's like, this is incredible. And it's like, she's like, I'm just being a decent human to these women, but they've only dated men that do the absolute bare minimum to below the bare minimum. She's like, it's so easy to impress them because they're like just blown away by these small acts.
Have lowered the bar that much.
Yeah. And so I think about that and it's like, there is this idea that like, if a guy is able to like scrape by at being a decent human, then hold on to him because there's not many keeper. Like that.
Well, and actually, this is a great thread that we're on right here, which I think will take us right into part 2. So here's part 2 of the TikTok. Okay. She did a response, but I'm excited for you to see.
We didn't know. We wasn't expecting a part 2.
I know, I surprised you because I'm a woman and I think they're those kind of things.
And you're go above and beyond every day.
What if I surprised them? All right,
amazing.
She responds to a comment that says, in my family, this is the opposite. The men do all the cooking. So here we go.
I want to respond to this comment because same. On my mom's side of the family, she has 2 sisters and 3 brothers, and it's always my uncles that are in the kitchen cooking. Not because they're asked to, they just instinctually that's what they want to do. And I'm not saying this applies to everyone, but we do want to keep in mind that typically when men are doing kinkeeping, they don't typically do it as invisibly as women are taught to. If they make a list of things that they were responsible for the holidays, they can probably name everything. Their kids could probably name everything. Women, on the other hand, I don't even know all of the jobs that I had during the holidays. I'm the oldest daughter in my family, so I was in charge of a lot. I helped pick out the gifts. I helped wrap, but I didn't tell anyone this. No one knew. My dad never found out. My brothers never found out. My mom didn't tell me to, but I saw the stress that she was going through, and I was like, do you want me to wrap some presents for you? And she was like, that would be great. Can you please do that? Imagine men in your life doing that exact same scenario. During, unwrapping of the presents, wouldn't they comment, I wrapped that one? When my uncle puts the buns on the table, he normally says, I made these buns this morning. They love to show off. And women just wouldn't do that because they're so fixated on the fact that it has to be hidden. A lot of you guys in the comments are asking for solutions, saying, what are we supposed to do about this? How are we supposed to break the cycle? I have a lot of faith in breaking the cycle because it's not governmental, it's societal. So if we talk about it more, it can solve itself. And one thing that's absolutely important is having vocabulary to express how you're feeling. I was reading one comment and this lady said that she had a term for it. She said she started referring to herself as the primary parent, which is just vocabulary that she made up. But she said after a year of using that term, she started seeing a lot of differences in the way her husband also took on tasks, just because she kept saying that she felt alone. And I think vocabulary has a lot of power. Having names for things and having titles that you can call something really change your family dynamic. So my solution is start talking about it. Show your husband this video, even if he is doing 50-50, because my dad is similar. He does a lot of the kinkeeping. Kinkeeping is just something that humans need to do. I saw some people saying, we should abolish it, we should just stop. If you're raising kids, you can't just stop kinkeeping. That just is not how it works. Look up the term weaponized incompetence and maybe have a talk with your husband on how it makes you feel if he does use that. An example being, can you do the dishes? I don't know how to do the dishes. No, you do the dishes better. That's weaponized incompetence. And not only is it important to educate our daughters about this, but our sons. Tell them dates and times. Help them memorize birthdays. And as women, don't be afraid to receive credit where credit is due.
Good stuff.
How interesting.
Very interesting.
I like the point at the end that this person makes is like, we can't just stop kinkeeping.
No, kinkeeping is like a part of life.
It's important.
It is maintaining
life.
Yeah.
You have to do the things you need to survive and to take care of your family, and your family in turn needing to take care of you.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, speaking of that, have either of you ever been gaslit about kinkeeping? So for example, over the holidays, this is the best example. Love my cousin. He's stunning. I don't think he'll ever listen to this, so I stayed with him. My husband and I did. And so did my mom and dad, and so did my sister.
Full house.
Yeah. And he just moved in. So we have grace for that, right? We're not expecting the royal treatment here. But we showed up to his house. There are no towels. There are no blankets or pads to sleep on or basic amenities that you would expect when someone hosts you, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
There's not really soap in the bathroom. Just basic things. Not in the bathroom, in the shower. There's not a towel to dry your hands in the bathroom, that kind of thing. And so I tried to resist the urge to take care of him and just grabbed, some blankets or was like, hey, maybe we should grab some blankets and towels while you're at your mom's, and so we kind of took from his mom's house and got the things we needed just to be covered. But we slept on the floor. It was fine. It was fine, but it was also okay, he didn't plan for these things. And so women, I can't even fathom ever doing that to someone, them coming to my house and me not getting all that ready, or if I don't have it already, profusely apologizing for not having that prepared. And it's funny.
That guilt is an interesting point of it, because I think so many women would feel so guilty for not having it together.
Right.
Whereas it seems as though someone your cousin didn't have any.
He was whatever.
He's this is just what it is.
This is math. And so circling back to what I mean by gaslighting is I feel if a woman expresses stress about trying to get all these stuff prepared or all these things prepared for for holidays, for vacations, for whatever, oftentimes I've experienced from men it's fine.
Oh,
We don't need that.
definitely.
Like, so what? You know, like, it's not a big deal. And so, like, kind of a belittling of all the preparation and everything that does go into it, where it's like, well, it's like, it's a minimization of all that work.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's reduced to the feminine touch as opposed to being like just basic, like, amenities.
Yeah, making sure guests have towels to dry their hands on.
Right?
Like the very basic
Yeah,
things
like bare minimum
that,
hosting
like,
things.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that, like, bachelor pads, like, just go without.
Yeah.
Not all of them. I want to, like, give some men some credit, especially,
Yeah.
I think, in our younger generation. I think
Yeah.
a lot of
Yeah.
men my age are definitely different.
Yeah.
But, not my cousin.
There's still some holdouts for sure. I definitely have experienced both.
There's kind of a minimization of that even being a value. It's like, oh, well, that's just like a feminine addition and it's nice, but like not necessary.
Like,
Feminine
why does it have to be feminine? Like, why does, like, making sure people have what they need equal feminine?
Yeah, like, why is like putting curtains
being
on
considerate
a window a feminine thing?
feminine? I just don't. Yeah, I don't get the correlation, and like why that exists, and why is that considered the obligation of the woman?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like in workplaces, probably if you like worked in a male dominated field, you're gonna see a lot of things probably just like don't happen.
Sure.
And to be fair, the men get on fine.
Yeah.
But like when a woman is present, if those things are not present, the expectation is that she would she would meet those needs.
She's not doing the job if those things are
exactly.
done.
Well, and I've been thinking about this, circling back to, I'm like, wow, there's so many things. Circling back to professionalism, I've noticed, like, you see a lot of male CEOs will have female assistants.
Oh, yeah.
And I've actually seen a lot of women CEOs have male assistants. And I think my theory is that female CEOs are doing their own fucking kinkeeping. And so they just need a task boy.
Yeah.
Who can just like grab the stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas male CEOs have a woman who is thinking through all the things he needs and like prioritizing and whatever. So it's like women executive assistants, in my opinion, should be paid like 80% more because they're like literally
doing the job.
They're doing the job,
Yeah.
so that he can just show up to the events and look pretty and whatever.
Yeah.
Whereas female CEOs are managing their own shit,
They're doing it
and doing the job,
Yeah.
and they just have someone who can like run errands.
Yeah. From the task list
That's
they
a theory.
formed for themselves.
That's my theory.
From all of the
Exactly.
things they already expected
Exactly.
and anticipated that they were going to need to get
Yes.
done that day.
Yes,
And then they're able to do the work of compiling all of that for
Exactly.
their assistant to take care of.
exactly.
Whereas I have literally watched female assistants like sit down with their like male boss and just cycle through like figuring out what they're going to eat that day.
Yeah, it's like,
and
okay, here's
figuring
your
out-
task list today.
This is what all you.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
I've watched that happen, and it's like, how do these people function? Like,
Exactly.
how do they function on off days
Yeah,
when
yeah.
they're not working?
I mean, I think the ultimate combo is when you have a female lead with a female assistant who can like support the
Yeah.
kinkeeping. And then you've got like a power duo.
Oh,
Totally.
yeah.
But I've noticed a lot of women have a hard time giving up that power in terms of like, because it's hard. I've experienced this in my marriage. It's hard to trust someone else to think ahead like I do.
Yeah. Well, because the track record is not good.
It's not good. It's very
because
bad.
you see the things like what was it? Something incompetence?
Weaponized incompetence.
Weaponized incompetence. Or you see like this unwillingness, or it seems like you're putting a burden onto them. And that's like, that is difficult to put on. Like, besides the aspects of like, of control and like desiring control, desiring authority over the things that are happening, but at the same time, like seeing the consequences of giving up that authority and seeing the way that impacts relationships because of weaponized incompetence, because of seeing the way that it becomes something that maybe the male counterpart complains about or is going to do, but it's going to be a honey-do list that he has to do to appease you because you're some like, you know, violent beast who's going to like have consequences for him if you don't. Like, that's not a healthy way to think about your relationship.
And here's the thing, you still have to make the list.
Yes.
Right? Like she talks about like I appreciate that in this TikTok she like says remembering dates is a task. Like making a point to memorize timelines and like have it in your mind what's happening next because that is very invisible labor that I do all the time.
Oh, definitely.
And just like having that in my brain and like men just assuming well that'll work out.
Yeah.
But they don't realize that it's working out because somebody is doing that work.
Yeah. Yeah. And well, it actually makes me think of another consequence that women probably are trying to avoid is that like showing off that she mentioned. Like it's kind of annoying to like have to listen to a man be like, oh, I did this, do. I have an example. I experienced this in a small way over Christmas as well. Christmas is ripe on our minds, obviously. It was the last time we were in a big family gathering and seeing these things in action. And I have wrapped all my own Christmas gifts for years and years and years. My brother hasn't. And this year, he was like, I had like made sure he had his gifts. And then I was like, would you like to wrap them? And he basically was like, well, I don't know how. And I'm like,
YouTube.
You're, I mean, he's 20, but like, I knew how to wrap gifts when I was 20.
I knew how to wrap gifts when I was 10.
12.
Yeah. And so I take him up to like a room of the house to like privately wrap gifts so that, you know, our mom doesn't see them. And I like showed him how to do it, all this stuff. And on Christmas Day, there was the comment of, oh, I wrapped this myself. And I'm like, yeah.
Like the rest
like
of us.
Everybody else wrapped their own gifts.
Like, praise me for doing something
this very
other
simple
people
task.
expect you to do.
If a woman did that, if a woman walked into Christmas and was like, I wrapped these, it would not be received well.
My family would be like, okay.
They'd be like, good for you.
They're like, as you should.
This happened. I love my brother-in-law.
I also love my brother for the record.
He's really good at wrapping gifts. I want to like be clear. Like he's very like he's got a great gift wrapping.
Yeah.
I am also fucking good at wrapping gifts. Okay. I wrap them really nicely.
Wow, it's like a competition.
I put little bows on them.
I think she is being competitive here.
No. Here's the thing.
Yeah.
Every Christmas, my brother-in-law's wrapping skills are brought up. Every Christmas. It's a thing. It's like a thing that my brother-in-law is so good at gift wrapping. I have never once in my life been recognized for my gift wrapping at Christmas.
Hell no.
That's what I'm saying. Because it's expected.
That's ridiculous.
It's expected that I would be good at that.
I can firsthand attest that you are a lovely gift wrapper.
Thank you.
I
know that I am.
compliment your gift wrapping for us.
You guys, you're the first and only people.
Because we see the work.
You're the first and only people
you
to.
both
Yes.
Beautiful
Actually,
gift
I mean, you're a
wrappers.
wonderful gift wrapper. You should get the credit. Right here on the Woman Being Podcast, we're getting the credit.
We can wrap gifts, gosh darn it.
We wrap gifts really nicely.
It's really pretty, guys.
You're welcome to the Christmas world.
We're bringing Christmas magic into the holiday
Basically,
season.
Santa fucking Claus. Because we know Mrs. Claus wrapped all those gifts.
She sure did. But yeah, I will say
that's so frustrating.
In the realm of all of this, and of also recognizing like how in the same thing that this person talked about in their TikTok, the men that do step up and do things within their family, being a child of divorce, I have a father who was forced to become a kinkeeper, right? Like he was forced to figure out how to do all of these things. And he actually was always probably more of a kinkeeper in a lot of ways than my mom was, which is, it's interesting to see. And I think that I've inherited a lot of my own kinkeeping tendencies from him rather than from my mom. Like he was always the one who kept like the cleaner home. He's the reason I know how to like do laundry or how to like keep my own car clean and things like that. So it's interesting to see that flip. And I think that flip, like I mentioned before, tends to only happen outside of a conventional marriage.
Yep.
There's something about the way we think about marriage in this like weird like complementarian patriarchal setup that we have ingrained in our culture as the idea of what a heterosexual marriage looks like. And when we exit out of it, like people like have to confront, taking care of themselves. Either that or they're just like a mess.
Yeah.
And so that's fascinating too, because again, it goes back to that point of like, people are capable of doing all these things. Like I've experienced all that very firsthand.
Women can fix their own dryers. We're capable, right?
Definitely. And the thing is I will say on the reverse of that, when it comes to this might be a little bit of a touchy subject. Maybe this is a controversial thing. I don't know.
Ooh.
I think that when it comes to women stepping into those typical male roles, I've noticed within myself and with other women will like brag about that a little bit in the idea of like, oh, well, I can change my own tire, and I
can drive a stick.
I did that. Like,
you better know it.
Or I fixed my toilet, or whatever it is. Like, I have noticed in general, like women being, I think on the one hand, very proud of themselves for figuring these things out. I like installed my own bidet recently to my toilet, and it was very frustrating. And I was like, I need a man to do this. At one point, I literally was like, I'm going to need to find a man to do this instead. Because I felt like I wasn't physically strong enough to do it at certain points. There was a really tight screw. And I eventually worked through it and did it myself. And I was so proud. And so I think there's a pride of figuring it out, something that you were not even like typically expected to do or taught how to do. Like we were expected and taught how to do the laundry and keep a house clean and to cook and things like that, usually. But to be expected to do all these other things is a whole different factor. And then I also think women will wind up getting like some like surprise and then also some like pats on the back when we do those things. For example, I always change my own air filters in my car. And when a man that I know saw me changing my own air filter, he was so impressed that I could do that. Changing your air filter is one of the easiest things that you can do in your car. Guys. It is ridiculously easy. You should never pay anyone else to do it because it's so easy. And he was like, wow, you know how to do that? And it's like, yes, I know how to lift a lever and swap out an air filter.
YouTube, guys.
A monkey could do it. So it's just like, so there's things like that where that's a little bit frustrating because it almost feels belittling. But it's also this whole idea of like, we fall into these specific gender roles, I think is what I'm getting at. And that when we step outside of them, it's seen as so unusual when like really these are like normal things that humans just have to do regardless of your gender.
Yeah, for sure. I think though back on like single parents though, and not saying your parents fall into this, but women I think are tended to be judged based on what they're not doing versus men are praised for what they are doing. So single dads could be literally doing the bare minimum and they're like, oh my God, he's a single dad. Look. But like moms, it's like, oh, her hair's a fucking mess. Like her kid doesn't have socks that are matching. Like XYZ. And it's like women are so quickly judged for what they're not doing versus men tend to be praised for what they are doing.
And I think men are offered so much more grace in terms of like what they're able or not able to do as fathers.
He's figuring it out.
Like,
he's trying.
Look at the cute single dad trying to. He's so confused.
Totally.
Whereas women, it's like, oh wow, she's stressed.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
She needs to take a Xanax.
She needs a nap. Like someone help her. Someone get her a bottle of wine. But I will agree with what you're saying. Like, I definitely am like, look at what I did. I'm so strong and capable. Like, I 100% do that because I do like the affirmation of being like, yeah, I'm smart and capable and I can figure this out. Right. Yeah, that feels good, and it is annoying, and I don't care.
Again, like I think we're trying to like balance this too, because in the conversation that it does go both ways. I will say in our workplace, when it comes to physical labor, it's automatically assumed that the men will help. Yeah, and it's not assumed that the women will.
Or if the Wi-Fi's broken, someone figure it out, not me.
Right, and so like I've really tried to intentionally insert myself into like opportunities for physical labor, like because it's not fair that men would just have to like lift everything and women don't. There are moments in time where it does go both ways. However, I've noticed in terms of proportions,
Yeah.
It's very, very off balance.
Yeah, super off balance.
And so it's almost like it's not really the women that need to be worried about like expanding their horizons as much because they're already doing 2/3 of the work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I would like to lead us down one more segue.
One more juicy little trail.
Tangent. Well, I was just thinking, let's get personal. You know, like we talked a little about our workplace, about the church, about like our relatives and things. But like Kelly and myself are in marriages. Emma is a single woman. I'm interested to see how this manifests. So like, how have you guys seen this show up in your personal relationships as a woman and a wife or a single lady?
Yeah. I mean, I mentioned earlier my stuff with like, oh my God, James, I need you to fix this thing in the car. And he's like, no, you can fix it. But in our house, James tends to do the majority of the laundry. So like within like cleaning, like it's a little more balanced because I do a lot of like the vacuuming and like, you know, kitchen and like bathrooms and stuff like that. But I will say it tends to pop up the most around meals, which I will say it's pretty balanced as far as, but like the things like, what are we having for dinner? I'm like, I don't know. What do you want? What are you making? Like that tends to be my response. But then I've noticed myself, instead of asking what's for dinner, it's what would you like for dinner? And I'm like, that's interesting. Or like,
so you ask what would you like, but
James
he would ask what's for dinner.
Interesting.
Yeah, which is like a really interesting observation.
It's just like a very subtle difference in words, but very different meanings.
But it's like the difference between what can I make you versus what are you making me?
Yeah.
It's like, oh.
Yeah. One is like considering somebody else, and the other is assuming something's going to occur.
Right. Yeah. Or I will say in some of my other relationships, people have asked, what are you making for dinner? And I'm like, I don't know. James is in charge tonight. Like, we could be eating ramen. I don't give two shits. Because our meal making is pretty like equal, I feel like. But I've also found myself like, when I'm making something that James normally makes for us, I will ask him, like, am I doing this right? Like, is it supposed to be this way or this way? And because I want to make sure I'm doing it the way he wants it done versus when James cooks me something, he just cooks it. Unless it's steak. He asks me every time how I like my steak, and he always knows. But, you know, I think that's one of the major things that it shows up in. Here's a pet peeve of mine. And James and I have talked about this, so he is aware, and I love him still. But James tends to procrastinate what he is going to wear to events. And I remind him weeks before, babe, we have this event coming up. Please figure out what you would like to wear now.
I will say, you, Kellyanne, decide what you're going to wear to an event before the event even exists.
We literally had a conversation about a hypothetical event
before we started recording.
Actually, it was 2 hypothetical events. Yes, that is true. But
not to discredit you. I still understand this is a pet peeve.
Yeah.
I'm just like, he doesn't have a ton of really nice things. His weight has fluctuated over the last 5 years that we've been married, which is totally fine. So sometimes he has to go shopping, or sometimes his clothes don't fit anymore, whatever. And so it's like, please be thinking about that now so that day of, it's not a scramble. And I let him just do his thing because I'm not going to control him and what he wears. But almost every time he goes shopping day of, and then we are either rushed or I'm stressed out because I am a timely person. I like to be on time. It stresses me out to not be on time. And we're almost always late. And every time it's a tension point. And again, I love him. We've talked through it, but it's like, just figure out what you're going to wear so that we're on time. I feel like I shouldn't have to remind you so that we are on time. I feel like we should just be on time. And that feels like part of the like scheduling side of things. Of
the
like,
idea of,
make sure we need to leave by 2:30.
Yeah.
If we don't leave by 2:30, we're going to be like, And so,
and in order to leave by 2:30, we have to do all these other things first.
These things.
We have to tick off this entire
Have
list.
you eaten yet? Have you gone to the bathroom? Have you brushed your hair? Have you taken a shower?
Did you cut your hair the day prior, or are you going to do it the day of? Because then you need to schedule at least an extra hour for that
have you scheduled your haircut yet?
Literally. Like, those are all the things that go through my mind. And I try not to control or coddle him because he hates that. He like will feel so smothered if I ask all the questions. Yeah. But the questions go through my mind and I'm like, I'm letting you take responsibility for this. But then when we are late, it is very frustrating for me.
Right. Like that I want to communicate to you that I need to be on time to this.
Yes. So whatever you need to do
to
make sure we are on time. Figure it out.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, the cooking thing has come up more recently in my marriage. Ross has always cooked some, especially since we moved to a house where we can have a grill. I have delegated probably more cooking to him. This past year, 2022, has just been crazy busy. And Ross has been working part-time. And so finally we did this exchange. This has been like the age-old argument of like who's going to do what. And like I want him to cook more, but he feels like he's not good enough to do it because I criticize everything he makes or whatever. Or I won't eat what he makes or, whatever the argument is.
Well, and also he just probably hasn't even had as much experience.
Oh, exactly. That's the thing. I'm like, I have 10 years of cooking experience. Of course, the stuff I'm going to make is going to be better. So we actually had a really interesting transition this year in like having him take on most of, if not all of the cooking load, as I've been the one working full time and beyond. Plus
doing like a little podcast.
Plus a few side
some
projects.
Some
other things.
And at first, the tension was very hard because I was trying to help. I don't know about help, but like I was trying to meter criticisms, but also like trying to give him like information about how I have done, like, all the wisdom that I've learned.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas he's feeling like, no, like, don't tell me what to do. I'm going to do it my way. If you want me to cook, I'm going to do it my way. So like kind of like trying to give up control on my end because I definitely enjoyed being in control. And so letting go of control was hard for me. And then like gaining that responsibility was hard for him and gaining confidence and learning a whole new thing.
Right. Yeah.
And I found like the best way for us to like meter that was like he started choosing his own recipes that I didn't make on the regular. And I think that like was the biggest thing is he had something of his own that I didn't make or know how to make necessarily. And I had my things that I used to make regularly. Yeah. And so, and that's been huge. And I would say now that things are a little less busy, I would say he cooks probably 2/3 of the time and I cook like 1/3 of the time. Like he's maybe like 2 meals a week and I'm 1. That has been like a point of tension in our marriage mainly because I've felt tired and he's felt like incapable. Or maybe not incapable, but like incapable of like pleasing me because I'm too critical or whatever. And so anyways, that's definitely a point of contention for us. And like it's a continued conversation. I think like she said in the video, talking about it more like helps it solve itself.
Yep,
like being honest about like the workload that's shared within our marriage has helped us like better take responsibility for things that we used to weaponize incompetence each other on.
Right.
And I think it's been really, really good and really healthy. It's hard. It's like hard work, like undoing all those gender roles, but it's important. Yeah. And I will say as well, like Ross, from ever since we've been married, has always been so empowering to me in terms of like, no, yeah, you can drive a stick. Yeah, you can fix the brake pads on our car. Yeah, like, let me teach you. Let me help you. Yeah. And whereas my dad usually would just like not bother.
Or get, my dad would get frustrated. Yeah. It's like, oh, you just can't figure it out. Yeah. But my husband's very patient and kind and he'll teach and he'll take the time. And it's like, wow, you care for me to want to know and to be independent. Right. Versus I wonder if fathers kind of like that dependence.
I don't know. I mean, I think part of it probably is I have an older brother. And so my dad probably just had an older sibling that was easier to teach because he was ahead of me by 2 years and everything. And so it was when he got down to teaching me, it just I was like, no, just Rob do it, Yeah. But yeah, I remember a lot of times my dad would ask for help or he would try and teach me something. And then I would mess up the first time or kind of make a mistake or whatever. And then he would just stop. He'd be like, never again. Yeah. I remember one time he tried to teach me to drive when I was 12 or something.
I'm sorry?
12?
Yeah. Well, it was just around the farm.
Oh, Minnesota.
In the country.
Around the farm, drive. Okay. And I put my foot on the gas and like just didn't know the amount of pressure to put. And so we kind of like lurched back and like I pressed the brake soon enough, but we like almost hit the garage behind us. And he was like, nope, get out. And like just didn't let me.
Goodness.
Yeah,
after that.
I understand that. And that's super frustrating. And what I've been processing recently is like realizing I was taught in a way that they expected me to already like be good at a certain level. And then it's like when you aren't good, like the opportunity is taken away.
Yeah.
And I would love to hear how men feel about that.
That's what I was going to say. I wonder if that happens to men as well in terms of...
You don't know how to clean a toilet?
Yeah. Feeling like, they don't know how to do those things. I've seen that with some of the women in my family where they'll even make comments amongst one another. Where, like, for example, my mom will make comments to my grandma where she's like, well, I won't even try to do that because you're just going to tell me I did it wrong. Like making a bed properly, like to my grandma's standards, you know? So there's things like that where I'm like, I can definitely see how that could discourage someone from who maybe tried to learn the things and did try to take initiative to be like, oh, never mind. You know?
Or like the man's like, oh, you don't know how to do laundry, you idiot. It's like, okay, well, then I just won't even put myself in that position. So yeah, it did. And then again, like that was my thing that I had to work on when it came to Ross and I figuring out cooking was I had to like close my mouth.
Right.
And like just eat. And be grateful
for
whatever I got. Which now I request things, which is like amazing. Where I'm like, hey, this thing that you make, I'd like that.
Yeah.
Totally. But then to go into myself, the single lady at the table.
Yes, I want to hear.
All the single ladies, put your hands up. You can't do that.
I'm doing the dance.
For the audio listeners, Kelly raised her hand, and she's not a single lady. When we first brought up Kinkeeping, in the back of my mind, the first thought was, what on earth would I even have to contribute to this? Because I'm not in a marriage, and I think it's largely talked about in the context of a marriage. And then I remembered, shoot, because I'm not in a marriage or any sort of like partnership like that, I have to do all the kinkeeping myself.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
And this is something that I've like sort of come to realize in the last couple of years. It's like, dang, having a partner would be real nice because then someone could do some of the stuff that I have to do for myself.
Yeah.
And I think that there is a lot more pressure to learn those like quote unquote masculine things because I don't have someone that I can like fall back on who's going to do those things or someone I can rely on. I actually recently, like within the past year, I have a male roommate and one of his like roles within our household is to take out the trash. And I like was like, wow, I don't have to take the trash out. Like, I've never been in that situation.
Yeah, interesting.
Where I don't have to take the trash out. Like, I have been in other living situations when it's me and several girls where we just sort of all alternate taking the trash out. Whenever the trash is ready to be taken out, someone takes it out. But now I'm like, oh, he's going to take it out. And so I don't have to do that. Although I will say sometimes I do. But it's this idea of like, I don't get the opportunity to rely on somebody to shoulder kinkeeping in general. And so it actually gives me a lot of empathy for other single people I know to like offer to do things for them. That's one thing that I've felt a lot with like when I've had roommates who are single to be like, okay, let me help you shoulder this responsibility. Or like, you're sick, so I'm going to take care of this thing for you that you can't take care of for yourself. And you don't have anyone to like, who you know will take care of you while you're sick. There's different things like that I'm like, that is something that I think people don't necessarily think about all the time with single people, or it's like, oh, you're so free and independent and you can do whatever you want. And it's like, yes, but also I'm the only one responsible for me.
Yeah.
You know? And then when it gets into like the dating world, I've definitely noticed, and even just having friends, like if I go to a guy's house, whether it's romantic or not, if he like offers me a beverage or a snack or like has a plan for what we're doing, it's like, wow, this is incredible. Like, but I go to like one of your houses and you offer me a beverage or a snack or have a plan of what we're doing, and it's like, yes, this is to be expected, you know? So it's I definitely see myself like internally having that dichotomy of just feeling like there's an expectation to go to a woman's home and be cared for, and there is a surprise to go to a man's home and be cared for. And so that's another thing that I notice in just in the relationships that I have and the relationships that I've been in is, again, there isn't the expectation for the man to do those things. At the same time, as a single person, there is the expectation for me to do most things for myself. Yeah. But then there's also the idea of like, I think that there is a level of kinkeeping pressure being lowered because I only have to rely on myself. So I am not trying to coordinate the schedule or the plans of anybody else.
Right.
I am looking after me, and like if I don't, have the best meal, or if I don't, clean my bathroom or whatever, like it's just me who's impacted, and I don't have to feel like the guilt or the pressure to do that for a partner of any kind.
Yep.
So that's very interesting. And it makes me think of this concept, which I learned about, I think on TikTok like 2 years ago or something, but it's this sort of movement thing that people started doing. I don't know if it's super popular still or not, but it was like women choosing to like cohabitate together who were just friends because they just wanted someone to like share groceries with and someone to like genuinely choosing to like be like home partners together, but in a non-romantic way.
Wow, okay.
I forget, there's a term for it that's like a platonic like marriage. It's essentially a domestic partnership. Yeah. And they're like, I remember because my best friend sent me like some TikToks about this, and she was like, we should do this. And I'm like, I couldn't rely on you for this. But, so it's like that's a thing that I've seen where like people are like yearning for that sharing of the load. And so to the point where they're like, okay, maybe I should just like move in with a friend that I can really trust and rely on, and who we're going to like agree to share these things together. And so I think that's fascinating. And I think it attests to the burden that kinkeeping can be, is that people are like, I need somebody to help me. Like the idea of like caring for yourself all the time is tiring.
I was curious, how do you feel, or how have you seen that kind of manifest in like dating, like coming up with dates and like taking someone on a date and all of that? Because I would say that's an interesting world where it's like men are expected to actually project manage their own dates. Yeah. And women like just get to experience them.
Good question.
Yeah. But it's 2023.
Yes. I've largely experienced the opposite where, and here's the thing. I think I'm still processing through some of this because often men have been like, oh, like you, like, what would you want to do? Like you can plan the date, and it feels like, oh, like that's so nice. Like I'm a feminist gal. Like I'm happy to plan a date. And I am happy to like do this, and like how cool of him that he's like letting me do that, And I'm debating if I think that's like good or bad. Because then it's like, okay, but like also, why am I being expected to plan this? Or like, why am I being given this burden? I have been in relationships where we essentially like alternate planning dates. So it's like they plan the first one, I plan the next one, back and forth, like for ever, I don't know.
For as long as the dating relationship lasts.
Yeah, exactly. So I've definitely seen that has been more of a trend, especially the type of guys that I would typically go on dates with, I think are the type that wouldn't necessarily be like, I'm picking you up at 6 and be ready and we're going to do this. Like they're definitely not. It's more of a discussion.
Yeah.
And so that's interesting. And I definitely see it as like, unusual when I'm asked, like, what do I want to do?
Right. Right.
And that's a whole interesting other thing of the idea that, like, men are given the responsibility of planning dates in general, why that exists, I think, is a whole other rabbit trail we could go down.
Yeah, well, that's interesting too, because like to plan a date for someone is like to romance someone, whereas like a woman just like planning life is not romantic.
Yeah.
But like that's sort of this like kind of, again, elevation of a man's work over a woman's.
Yeah.
And I've also seen a lot of women complain like when after they get married or they've been together long enough, like, oh, we don't go on dates anymore. He doesn't do that anymore.
Yeah.
And it's like sort of like, well, I've done that
So
part
now
of my
it's not
responsibility, so
happening.
I'm done.
Exactly.
But it's like maybe women, it's not the dating that they miss. Maybe they just miss not having to like make all the decisions.
Yeah.
Maybe they're decision fatigued and tired.
Yeah.
And
Decision fatigue is so real. Like, and I think that's probably a portion of kin keeping that we just haven't touched on or don't have time to. But like when someone asks like, what are we doing or what's the decision? I'm like, I don't know. Like, it's like when you're just tired, you're tired. And I'm like, I literally can't comprehend what is better. So you pick.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Definitely.
But yeah, I mean, I think kinkeeping shows up in, I mean, like, we could talk about birth order.
Oh, God.
We could talk about, you know, like, I mean, we're older sisters.
Yep.
All
of
year.
us.
All oldest sisters.
Yeah.
And so, like, we understand the idea of, like, being sort of the responsible one in the family and having to kind of take that on.
Watching all of your younger, or you two just have one younger sibling. I have 3, and I always knew where they all were. If we were at some kind of event, I was like, I know where each and every one of them are because, like, my parents were exhausted and tired and couldn't, like, just keep up with all of us because we literally outnumbered them. And, like, I was like, if no one else does this, like, if I don't do this, no one else will. So it was, like, assumed. But
Totally.
Sorry. It was just like triggered.
Yeah. It just, as Emma was talking, I was like going through my mind of all the ways that kinkeeping shows up outside the context of like relationships or like being a man and a woman. Like it can show up like with roommates. It can show up. And I'd love to see like if you experience that like as a roommate, because there's definitely usually like a house mom, you know?
There is. And I have been in the house mom role and I've also been out of the house mom role. I think there's a lot of things that depend on that. But I will say I've mostly only lived with women. And so probably people who are more inclined towards kinkeeping in general. And in fact, I would say that most of the women that I've lived with have like taught me how to kinkeep better, and like they pressured me to like step up my game. And so I felt like pressure to like pull my weight in those living situations and to like learn how to keep things clean the way that they would have wanted it to be cleaned, or like how to maintain the household in the way that they would have wanted. Which then like in reverse, when I was in other living situations where people didn't have those standards, I was implementing those and being the one that they're trying to like live up to. But I've noticed in general with women, we try to step up instead of defaulting to that, I keep forgetting the word, incompetence. Weaponized incompetence. Instead of being like, oh, I just don't know how to do that. It's like, shoot, I need to figure out how to do this because that's going to equal like the best situation for all. And so that's been the biggest thing that I've noticed, especially since, like I mentioned before, my mom wasn't the biggest like kin keeper. To be very fair to her, my mom has worked has had a very full type of job my entire life. My mom has been very successful career-wise, and that is a big reason why she wasn't a big like housekeeper in general. And also being a single mom on top of all of that. And so I think that being someone who wasn't raised with a mom who did those things as much, I had to learn those things from roommates and like people that I lived with and was around. So that's an interesting like difference to me, is seeing the way that when I compare that to, for example, visiting my brother's house and where he lives, and hearing about the state that his home has been in when he lives with like 4 other college guys. It's very different. Whereas when I was in college, I was like forced to step up my game
Right.
as a housekeeper.
Yep.
He in college is being permitted to not improve his game in any way.
Right. Well, that's actually, that's why I'm like a big proponent of co-ed housing. Like, I think just having like men and women together in a space, like it doesn't have to be like everyone sleeping together. I don't know why to me, it's weird that would be scandalous at all.
Yeah.
But like, because it's so beneficial because then they can uplift each other. I've noticed like my husband was on a co-ed dorm in college and like the women on his floor definitely elevated the way the men presented themselves. And so it's almost like, I mean, peer pressure is a very powerful tool to like grow and like become a better human and take on more responsibility. And, you know, I think those are important things. Well, this has been a riveting conversation.
It has.
Appreciate you guys like just, you know, diving into just the gray with me.
Yeah. Thanks for the topic.
We didn't really know what we were going to get into. It was just sort of like a conversational, see where this goes kind of thing, which was kind of fun. But I found this conversation to be very fascinating. On TikTok, lots of people are talking about it. Kinkeeping, weaponized incompetence, all that stuff. And it like because of it, it's like showed up for me more when I'm like at work or at home.
Yeah.
Or,
you're like aware of it now. You've like taken the pill and you see the Matrix.
Yeah. So anyways, for all those listeners, I hope you start to see the Matrix. And I hope, and I actually would love to hear, you know,
let us know
what you think about it.
What are the ways you're seeing kinkeeping come up in your life?
Yeah,
like,
definitely.
Are your eyes opening to these things? This is something that you've been like aware of for a long time.
Men, like in what ways do you feel like empowered or disempowered to like combat that? You know, I'm just interested.
Totally.
Yeah,
It'd be fascinating to hear, you know, other perspectives. But all that being said, this has been great. Love to talk to you always. And,
you as well.
And with that, we will see you guys next week. Bye.
Bye.